Hello and welcome back to the Happiness Over Stress podcast. I'm very pleased because we've got Hannah Willow again on the podcast, and we did promise we're going to have another episode to talk about stress management. You heard in the last episode. If you haven't found it, please go find it. It was really useful with lots of tips about happiness and being present. But today we're going to talk about stress management. We've got Hannah Willow, who was the Scotland tree hugging champion. Can you tell us a bit about that, Hannah?
Oh,
That
I
is
love it.
amazing.
I know. It's definitely a conversation topic for a party. They're like, tell me, what does this even
You know,
involve? People didn't know that there are competitions for tree hugging. And to be fair, neither did I. When I was invited to go along with a friend, I thought it was just a little bit of a fun event, like a charity fundraising thing. And turn up and everybody's getting these numbers put on their back. And I'm like, oh, it's a competition. Amazing. I'm a quite competitive, being one of 8 children. I'm like, right, okay, I want to win. So, yeah, it was set in the woods near Glasgow, and it had 3 rounds. There was a speed hugging race, which is where you have to hug as many trees as you can in a minute, but each hug has to last 5 seconds long. And then there was the dedication hug, and the dedication hug is all about trying to show as much like love and devotion and loyalty to a tree as you can through a hug. And for that one, I did this dance with a beech tree. I love to dance. I was a dancer growing up, and so I thought, oh, something I know well. And so I did this sort of very lyrical dance around the tree, a bit like a fairy. And that was actually the round that won me the competition. So that went down well. And then and you can actually see that on my YouTube channel if you're curious about tree hugging.
Yeah.
It's all on my YouTube channel.
I
Willow
saw
Tree
it. It
Mission.
was really good. You had the rainbow colors. It was amazing.
Oh, that was the World Championship one that I did.
Was that? Oh,
yeah.
Oh my goodness. Tell us about that as well.
I'll go on to tell you that in a second. Yeah. So the third round is freestyle, which is much fun and flair and creativity as you can. So the 3 rounds are judged by 3 judges. So it's all very official. But the tree hugging championship sort of started maybe 7 years ago, actually, in Finland. There was a lovely family who owned a forest, and their family business for many years for like 100 years had been to grow and then cut down the trees as part of like a logging company, I think. Anyway, they loved their trees so much they didn't want to cut them down, and so they had to come up with a new business model. And this is where their forest bathing, nature immersion business came about. So people could come and string up hammocks in the woods and forest bathe, and also the tree hugging contest started, and then it sort of spread to other places. And when I did the one in Glasgow, it won me the sort of entry into the World Championships in 2025 last summer. And yeah, I went over and I camped out in the woods in a hammock for 3 days. It was the most fabulous thing. I loved it. We wake up to some deer walking past us in the morning. We were foraging for wild blueberries, cooking our breakfast over an open fire and making hot coffee over the open fire. And yeah, it was a beautiful event. And in that particular competition, I think I won the freestyle round, which is where I gathered all of the people that were there, and I was dressed like a rainbow fairy, and I gathered everybody in for this big collective hug where everybody was gathered around one tree. We all hugged in together. It was a lovely magical moment. But it was a lot of fun. And I think there was like a 6-year-old boy and his dad who won, which was wonderful. I felt so happy for them because for me, my work with children is all about trying to engage them in nature. So it felt very beautiful to see that being the outcome, that this father and child duo won it.
Yeah, but I think really it was a test of your fitness and your fun, because it sounds like those are the amazing things that you're doing. And honestly, you deserve the trophy for being able to stay and camp outside like that. People that know me will be thinking, Nikki's probably so scared right now. I don't do camping, I don't do outdoors, so I'm really impressed that you did that. Saying that though, I went to visit a friend recently and realized that they had cut down the trees in front of their house and the place looked so bare, not nice. And you just think sometimes people like me that are very academic and indoorsy would be like, oh, tree hugging, what's that about? But you've really educated us today. And, I can testify it's amazing, the preserving of the trees, because it brings so much to the environment. But apart from that as well, nature does so much for us in terms of stress relief, in terms of spirituality in terms of connecting with nature. So I was very pleased that you took the time to join us on the podcast today, because of course we like to talk about stress management as well. Do you want to tell us a bit about what you found out so far about how spending time in nature, how doing this has helped with your stress management?
So, I mean, it really was reconnecting in a meaningful way to nature that helped me. About maybe, I would say 7 years ago, I was going through a bit of a mental health crisis, and I was really struggling with balancing, home life and work life and various other things that were going on. And alongside, other things, I started meditating and doing some yoga. I would take myself out every day, and I would just sit, and I would, like I said, use mindfulness practices, just listening, using your five senses, taste, touch, hearing, sight, because that takes you out of your thinking brain. It brings you into the moment. And that's where my Just Be story came about. And that was really the beginning of my journey with mindfulness and meditation and utilizing the natural world in order to access that way of tapping into my parasympathetic. I can't say it now. It's a tongue twister. Parasympathetic nervous system. Thank you. Put my teeth back in. So it really, really did ground me. It literally does ground you. And I love doing things like, I know this is going to probably ick you, but putting my feet on my bare feet on the ground every day. And I know you're like, oh no. And it obviously has to be something that works for you, but genuinely, there is research to show that is so good for you. It really balances your whole system. For me personally, this is what I do: is every day I go out and I place my feet on the ground. I have a little place in my garden, my little sanctuary. And I just stand and I feel grounded. I imagine roots growing through my feet into the earth and helping me feel stable and steady and secure. I also send out prayers from my heart. I sort of do this circle motion where I face each of the four directions. I start with the east, and I imagine the sun rising in the east, and I give thanks to the light. And I imagine light coming from my body and saying, may there be peace and love and unity and joy in the east. And I do that for all of the directions, imagining the light from my heart reaching all of the people and places and animals in those different directions. And that's something I do every day. It's almost like a daily prayer that connects me in a way that through the roots, the tree, there's a symbol of the tree of life that goes through so many different cultures and belief systems. And there's real wisdom in that. The roots connect under the ground, and they're all part of this mycelium network, which is like an underground network, like the internet, but under the ground. There's all of these messages being sent through the earth. And so I like to think that if I can maybe even just put my hands on the trunk of what I call my prayer tree, and I send a prayer into the trunk of the tree, that those prayers will go into the network, into the earth, and they'll be sent out. And then as people are walking through the streets, they might even pick up those prayers through their feet. And in the same way that we send those prayers through our voices, through our actual prayers, if that's the way that you connect to God or to something beyond yourself, the breath and the words that we speak are carried on the air and on the wind. So it's just whichever way you feel that you can connect to something beyond yourself. That for me helps me to feel less stressed, because when you take yourself beyond your own reality in some ways, embodying and going, okay, I'm present in my body, but also going, I'm connected to everybody else as well. And I can send my love and my light and my peace through whatever network works for you, whether that be through God or through prayer or through the earth, which is my go-to quite often. Yeah.
That's really good, because you've brought us back to the topic of spirituality, which I often talk about. A lot of listeners will know I'm a Christian, and I believe in prayer. I believe in connecting to God and seeing things from God's perspective. That really reduces the stress. But even in the Bible, it talks about God creating the heavens and the earth, and that's reminding yourself that you're just one little part of everything else reduces stress, rather than feeling like you're carrying the whole weight of the world on your shoulders. So I like the fact that you go out there in nature and you try and get grounded as well as contributing as well, not just kind of what can I take, it's actually also contributing through prayer, through your thoughts. And I feel that spirituality side of things is really good for your mental health, which then also helps your overall well-being. But then, it's nice that you're giving options as well for people that don't particularly believe in God or are not Christians, because, there are lots of ways you can get benefits from that, looking after your spirituality, even if you're not a person of faith. And I think the other thing you talked about before was creativity with your writing, with your paintings. I think that's something else that's quite good for your mental health. Have you found that that's a go-to for you as well?
Hugely, yeah. I kind of go through ebbs and flows with drawing and painting, but as a child, I was a very, very creative
Mm,
soul. I loved to draw, I loved to paint,
mm,
and coming back to my creative side as an
mm,
adult was very transformative. Um,
mm,
and I would set aside maybe an hour in the morning before all the children are awake, and I would sit and I'd do my meditations and things, but I would also assign time just to draw, and I wouldn't necessarily have a set outcome like I'm going to draw this picture. I would just choose a color that was speaking to me that morning, and I would just start moving the pencil and just enjoying observing the shapes and patterns that came through.
mm,
And then that turned into creating these beautiful geometries, like the seed of life. You can actually see it behind me. Which are like these interlacing circles, and that was
okay.
quite a mindful process for me, just like following a pattern. Um, and then other times I use it as a bit of a meditation as well. So I'll kind of ask my heart, it's like, what do I need to know today? And I'll just let the picture emerge. Sometimes it'll just start as like swirling colors, and then a picture starts to come through the page. And you can tell a lot about maybe what's going on in your subconscious through that
Mm,
intuitive art practice.
mm,
But like I've said before, I do write children's books and I illustrate them myself.
mm,
And my drawings can often be quite childlike. Um, they're not particularly, skilled in any way, but I enjoy um, having that mindset that it doesn't matter if it's not perfect. It
mhm,
doesn't matter if it's not really curated and detailed,
mm,
because I think, the children are the best artists
mm,
because they're so innocent with it. So
yeah,
when I was connecting to my inner child, going through this process of writing my poems and prayers, I'd also draw an illustration that connected with that poem or prayer. And that's where my series of inner child uh, pictures came from. And again, it was this idea of non-perfection, like it doesn't have to be perfect. We are God, or whatever you want to call it, the creator, whatever is behind this amazing earth that we live on.
mm,
We are this masterpiece in the
yeah,
making. And it's good to make mistakes because that's how we learn and grow.
mm,
And the great artists would
mm,
often make mistakes, but then that would then maybe turn the painting into something else or something
yeah,
better.
mhm,
Um, but also to remember that we are the painting, but we also are the painter behind it as well. We get to create our lives in the way
yeah,
that we want to.
mm,
Um, so yeah, I would say if you don't consider yourself arty, it doesn't
mm,
matter.
yeah,
Choose a medium that you feel particularly drawn to, whether that be pastels or pencil drawing, or think even finger painting. Children just start with experimenting if you quite like getting sensory. Or
mhm,
clay. Clay is a
mm,
great medium.
mm,
And there's something called play therapy. I don't know if you've heard of play
mhm,
therapy, but that's a
yeah,
good way of just molding the clay, just having a go, making
yeah,
shapes, enjoying the textures.
mhm,
I've used that a lot with both children and adults in order to just see what wants to come through, because yeah, that again is a connection to the earth. Clay is earth,
yeah,
and it helps us to be very mindful and in the moment. And so see what the God in you wants to
mm,
create
mm,
and wants to
yeah.
tell you or wants to speak to you.
Yeah, that's really good. I love how you point out the fact that we also need to be in control, not just thinking life happens to us. You're realizing that you are the captain of your own ship as well, and that's
Right.
really important. Something else you said that was amazing was the fact that you create the time to do this. So it's
Mm.
not just that if you've got free time, you do it because it's important for your mental health, for your well-being. You create the time to do it. And I know you're a mom as well. Yeah, I know you're busy as well. So how do you balance it all so that you're able to make that time? Because a lot of people who are moms, guys, she's actually got 3 children, so she's not like relaxing, doing nothing. How do you make that time to do things that are good for your mental health and to just have that time to be childlike and to just enjoy life and to be who you were created to be?
When I first started, when I was really finding it hard to get the balance right, I just decided. I think I'd read a book called Miracle Morning. Or the 5 a.m. Club, or both of them. And it was all about starting your day right. So I started, setting my alarm just maybe half an hour early each day, and doing things that I knew were going to set my day up well. So I just started getting up before the children, and allowing myself that time just for myself before, all of the jobs started, all of the routines. And I work full time as a teacher. And then, just allowing yourself just a space, because actually, you know, we maybe dedicate time to relationships that matter in our life, whether that be our children or parents or whoever. But how often do we dedicate time to the relationship we have with ourselves?
Yeah.
And there's another book that I highly recommend called The Artist's Way. It's quite an old one by Julia Cameron. And I remember her talking about dating yourself, taking time once a week to just take yourself on a date, whether that be going for a walk or maybe treating yourself to something nice from the shop, and recognizing that you should be your own best friend. And quite often we allow the inner critic, the voice in our head, to take over it. And I think my son said to me once when he was about 6 years old, my brain is my friend. And I was like, that really struck me, because actually, how long would you keep a friend that speaks to you in the way that you do sometimes in your head? Sometimes when you are, really hard on yourself, you wouldn't keep that friend for very long if if that's the way that they were talking to you. So remind yourself that you should be your own best friend. And what would your best friend be asking you to do? They'd be championing you. They'd be saying, "Come on, you can do this. You deserve time to find yourself, or to feel you." I mean, what is it that makes you you? Children are really good at gravitating to the things that bring them joy, and as adults, we get lost in life, in the routines and the things that we have to do. But I'm trying to tell people all the time, like, what is it that brings you joy? What hobbies do you find or do that helps you to feel maybe like more like you were when you were younger? That you felt a lot of happiness from doing. And for me, it was always like creativity, dancing, and being out in nature. Those are the 3 things that I always loved as a child. But quite often, if you don't know, if you've forgotten what it was that made you happy as a young person, try and go back to that person, or even just visualize that childlike self in front of you and go, what is it that I need to remind me of my joy, my spark, my bliss? As I think it's Joseph Campbell says in his Hero's Journey book, follow your bliss. But what does that mean? What does that mean for you? And it could be as simple as having a really good conversation with somebody that really means a lot to you. Some people are just conversationalists and they love to have a good chat. It doesn't have to be, painting a picture or going out in nature and tree hugging like I do. Just find what it is that brings you joy. And it could be like reading a good book, because some people are very, like I said, you're very academic. Maybe just sitting and setting some time aside to read a good book. But that can bring that nourishment for the soul.
That is true. We need to be so intentional about these things, because it's not, things are not going to change if we don't do something about it. So I like that you've encouraged us to do that. And the other thing that you were saying that really struck me as well was the fact that it's not always so obvious. Sometimes we have to sit and imagine and think, what is it that makes me happy? And I find when you love yourself, when you have a good relationship with yourself, you end up having a better relationship with other people. Even the Bible says, love your neighbor as yourself. So you can't love other people properly if you don't love yourself. So doing that is not a selfish thing. It's actually about looking after yourself so you can be better to look after other people, so you can be a better person for the world around you. And I think that's really important. you mentioned about the books that have helped you before. You've mentioned about the activities that you do that have helped, and thank you for recognizing people like us that don't particularly do the painting. And I do love writing. I love going out for walks. So find your thing really that helps you to feel more you and helps you to be a happier person rather than focusing so much on the stresses of the adulthood. I have to do this. I have to do that. But yeah, just to finish, do you have any kind of concluding advice for our listeners for specifically choosing happiness over stress for the second half of this year? Shall I say not even the second half? We've only got 5 months to go for this year. So if anyone's listening now and thinking, oh, I haven't really started 2026 right, I've not really got the right things in place, what would you advise at this time?
Every day is a new day. We get the opportunity when we rise each morning to start afresh. And there's in fact, I think it's the first page in my children's book, Stay Well with My Child. It's an image of a little girl looking over a horizon with the sun's rising in the distance. And it's the caption next to it is, you see, child, the sun always rises again. And it's remembering that just like the sun that always rises, although that could be a moon, the sun always rises again, but also the moon is there to remind us that even in the darkness, that there's light. That everything flows, everything moves. We are electromagnetic beings. Our body is constantly in a state of vibrating and movement, and nothing stays stagnant for very long. In fact, it's always moving. So recognizing that we are just part of that movement, and that we just need to find our song, the way that melodies move. Find what it is that, or our note in the song, or the way that we can move with the dance of life. And that all sounds kind of a bit etheric, but yeah, there's joy and there's happiness to be found when we choose to see it. We need to have the eyes to see it. We need to see through the eyes of the heart. This is another thing that I say a lot, and is in one of my children's book, is this child who goes in search for Mother Earth. And at the end of the story, that the tree, who is Mother Earth, says, you just need to remember to see through your heart. And when we come back to love, both loving ourselves and others around us, the world feels like a good place, even though there is darkness and there is challenge and there's chaos. We get to beam the light from within us to others, to remind them of their light in the same way that the sun does that for us. So choosing to be the light, choosing to see through the eyes of love.
Yeah. That's really good. Thank you so much, Hannah. I think we're going to have to continue this conversation. We'll have a cup of tea and we'll come back again. But for you guys, it might have to be next week's episode. But it's been so good talking about finding happiness and being intentional about the things that we do and how we spend our time. Feel free to send your comments to afiniki.co.uk or any questions you have for Hannah. But we'll carry on this conversation in the next episode. Thank you. Have a good week. Bye.